After a while, they slowly separated from each other, and a light blush marked Sophie's face. She happily told him, "I was waiting for you." "I knew you would be, so I came here as soon as my classes got over." "How are you doing here?" Jacob asked as they both settled down on the edge of the bed. "Horribly. I don't like it here." Sophie cringed at the thought of spending another 9 days in the little room. She thought she'd grown up enough to be over-grounding, but apparently not. Jacob didn't understand her situation too much because, even though he was often grounded when he was younger, he had never been grounded for 10 days and completely cut off from the outside world on top of that. Obviously, Walter was not as strict as a father as Draken. Jacob suddenly remembered something and pulled a sheet of paper out of his bag. "I got you this practice sheet to solve since you're going to have a lot of free time here." "Are you serious? I get grounded and trying to fight my parents for you? And you're giving me homework?" Sophie frowned at him dangerously. "Yeah, well, first of all, announcing that at the dinner table was kind of poor judgment on your part. Not exactly my fault. And secondly, don't forget that your finals are near and your dad is already really mad. So better get to work," Jacob shrugged. "Are you really blaming me right now?" "You know what? Get out," Sophie huffed angrily. When she tried to push him away, Jacob held Sophie's wrist and said, Hey, I'm not blaming you. I just wish that you had discussed it with me first. You know how thankful I am that you're standing up for me? But I don't want you to get into trouble for me. At least not any more trouble than you're already in." "You said that I could live with you," Sophie said stubbornly. "And I stand by it, of course. You can live with me. I just hope that the situation of the severing tie never actually happens," Jacob sighed, worried about their future. I hope so too," Sophie looked at him, worried as well. "Why haven't you eaten anything?" Jacob changed the subject. He didn't want to upset Sophie more than he already had. "I wasn't hungry," Sophie answered and looked away. "Hey, please don't take your anger out on the food. You can't stay without eating for 10 days, Jacob tried to convince her. Sophie was touched by his sincere concern and bit her lip before saying, "Honestly, I actually am a little hungry." "Great, I'll get someone to bring you some dinner right away," Jacob said cheerfully and started to head outside. "No, not right now. You can tell them on your way out. Sit with me for some time," Sophie stopped him. Jacob wanted to argue and get her to eat first, but he thought she might get angry again and not eat at all. So he settled down on the bed again and they started talking about random things, avoiding any topics that might upset either of them. Standing outside the palace, General Arthur tried to distract himself so as to give the couple their privacy and not listen on their conversation. He relaxed, knowing that the princess was safe. The prince is a kind and decent man. With a smile, General Arthur closed his eyes and rested while standing at the door. 2 hours later, Jacob finally came out of the room. Immediately, General Arthur walked over and lifted Jacob's hand. "Soph's hungry. Please get someone to bring her some dinner," Jacob said to General Arthur when they walked out of the palace. "I will," General Arthur answered immediately. "I tried to convince her the whole day standing out of the room. The princess was stubborn and wouldn't eat or drink. However, the prince visited her for a while, and Princess Soph admitted to being hungry. Well," General Arthur thought to himself while walking Jacob to the main gate of the Dragon Palace. "And is there anything special happening in the Dragon Palace?" While they were walking towards the main gate, Jacob asked in a seemingly casual way. "Ah, things in the Dragon Palace." As the head manager of the Dragon Palace for hundreds of years, General Arthur immediately understood Jacob's question. After some consideration, he continued, "Things are not as good as before." He knew exactly what he should and shouldn't say. However, General Arthur was grateful for Jacob's sincerity towards him and decided to give him some hints. "The incident about your destruction of half of the South Atlantic Dragon Palace is spreading to each corner of the Dragon Palace. Some applauded you, and some disapproved of your impulsiveness. Many of them are saying that the fire in the South Atlantic Dragon Palace is spreading to the North Atlantic Dragon Palace. Maybe my old ears were playing tricks on me, but I seem to have heard some of the purple-robed senior elders suggesting stripping your status as the prince to end the crisis." General Arthur looked old with his haunch back, and his words were not connected. However, he delivered the most important information to Jacob. At Jacob's expectant look, General Arthur yawned and covered his mouth. I was sleepy. What did I say?" "Oh, General Arthur, you said nothing," Jacob answered cooperatively. However, Jacob had a general idea of the situation, knowing that the purple-robed elders in the Dragon Palace were the most powerful and influential elders. Silently, General Arthur walked Jacob to the main gate of the Dragon Palace while different emotions surged in his heart. After Jacob brought back large quantities of godly elixir pills from the Nine Dragons Palace, all the elders got their share, and Jacob was allocated only one bottle. However, the prince didn't have any complaints. Now that the clan was in crisis, the first thought they had was to sacrifice the outsider, the prince. General Arthur sighed a little, but as the head manager of the internal affairs of the Dragon Palace, he wasn't one of the decision-makers of the palace. Comparatively, those purple-robed elders' words weighed more than his. Well, if Third Lord was here, such a thing would never happen. Although Third Lord doesn't quite like the prince, he is honorable and fierce. He would never abandon the prince. Nurturing these thoughts, General Arthur found they had arrived at the main gate of the Dragon Palace without noticing. General Arthur, please go back in. I'll head back now. Jacob turned to him and said in a low voice, Okay, take care, Prince Jacob. General Arthur took Jacob's hand in his and said sincerely. He was reluctant to leave Jacob, and the words, take care, were not just out of politeness. As the prince, Jacob was now under the protection of the clan. But if the North Atlantic abandoned him, then the things Jacob had done for the North Atlantic Dragon Palace would get him in big trouble. The troubles included the South Atlantic Dragon Palace's revenge, the grudge of Inspector Tom, and the minor forces previously suppressed by the North Atlantic Dragon Palace. Let's go. Jacob took out Snowflake and patted its head. Splitting the water, he took off swiftly. Standing at the gate, General Arthur looked after Jacob's retreating back and heaved a heavy sigh. Then he turned and walked back through the huge gate of the Dragon Palace. Sitting on Snowflake, Jacob traveled across the night sky over the city and returned to the university in the blink of an eye.